do you think you made the right decision as a blind person coming to live in Canada? How has the experience been like?
I made the right decision, you know, because right now, even though I'm not a citizen, I receive some form of stipends from the government, which shows that the government cares about the welfare of persons living with disability. Things like that are not in Nigeria. When I was in Nigeria, when I became blind, I didn't receive anything. As a Nigerian citizen, they are very, very key on inclusion. Even the buildings, their brails and everything. You know, hardly do you see that in Nigeria. Even the roads. I go out with my wife. I take walks with my wife. I couldn't do that in Nigeria. I stayed in Ikorodu. Back then, I would be walking from inside Ikorodu to BRT. I can't count how many people will bump into me. My wife will be like, you cannot even see. Someone that is not seeing. Now, my expectation was coming to Canada, I'll be employed. That there's a lot of jobs. They will give me preference and all of that. But listening to those people, it's almost like it's the same thing.
How did you become impaired? And when that happened, was it back home in Nigeria or in Canada? Or what was the backstory?
And it happened September 12, 2019. I was parked at 1004 Estate, if you know that place, at Victoria Island, Lagos. And I picked up a rider. I got a request. I used the Google map and it navigated us through a co-bridge, like 20 minutes or 30 minutes thereabout into the traffic. We realized, we noticed two young men. So the one that had the gun, that was putting his hand in his pocket, pulled out the gun and was aiming at me. And the next thing I heard was, your phone, give me your phone, you know. Then I looked up. As I looked up, bang, he shot at me. So I lost consciousness. Sorry, I may get a little bit emotional. There was a time in the car I was begging the policeman to shoot me. I was in so much pain. So I remember I summoned the corridor and I pulled one of the doctors and I said, "Doctor, tell me what's happening." And he said, and I quote him, he said, "Tomi, I'm afraid you may not be able to see again."
It is evident that you are a Nigerian man, a father, a husband, who is living in Canada as a visually impaired person. And I'm sure your own experiences will be somewhat different from other immigrants, you know, and it's very interesting to know how this has been going on for you. But before I even go down that line, I don't know if you don't mind sharing. I would like to know exactly how did you become visually impaired, and when that happened, was it back home in Nigeria or in Canada? Or what's the backstory about how this happened?
All right. So I became visually impaired. That was 2019, back in Nigeria, not Canada. So back then I was a very, very entrepreneurial person. So I always believed in not relying on the government, relying on working on people. So I just wanted to do business. So I started driving for Uber and Bolt. And it happened September 12, 2019. I was parked at 1004 Estate, if you know that place, at Victoria Island, Lagos. I was just parked there. I rested for a while and I was waiting towards the evening to just get a trip that would take me towards the mainland, because I was staying on the mainland. And I picked up a rider. I got a request. And the Google map, I asked her if I should use the Google map. Most times I ask my riders if, oh, should I use the Google map or you direct me? So she said, use the Google map. And I did as she said. I used the Google map and it navigated us through a co-bridge, a common bridge. So I think it was about 8:30 p.m. thereabout. So we encountered some traffic on the bridge, and like 20 minutes or 30 minutes thereabout into the traffic, we realized, we noticed two young men. You know, I literally thought these were young men that were coming back from work. You know, So they're just walking down the bridge. And when they came close to my car, one of them was looking into my car suspiciously. You know, so that light bulb just turned on and said, this guy might just be a robber. Because I remember back then I used to hear and read from group chats of other drivers where they'll say, Echo Bridge, things happening there, people get robbed there, and it does something. And I was like, okay, so I think the reason why this guy is looking in my car this way is because something's about to happen. So they passed the car, but they stopped behind my car. So I noticed my phone. My phone was mounted on the dashboard. There was the Google Map, so my phone was on, active, obviously. So I think it's on my phone. So they stopped behind my car. Then I started looking towards my side mirror. I was looking, it was looking so suspicious. The way he was putting his hand, was trying to get rid. I still wanted to do something. Was one of them was putting his hand in his pocket. So it turned out that the one that put his hand in his pocket came to the side of my door, my own window. Then my rider was behind me. The other one did not have a gun. So the one that had a gun, that was putting his hand in his pocket, pulled out the gun and was aiming at me. And the next thing I heard was, your phone, give me your phone. The other one was telling my rider the same thing, but that one didn't have a gun. And I must say that I was in shock. This kind of thing have not happened to me before. A gun have never been pointed to my face that way. I've only seen that in Hollywood movies because I love Hollywood movies, So I was in shock. I was like, okay, so this is real. So everything happened so fast. Within a minute, I decided to. So before they came back, I already hid my phone. So I put the phone in a pigeonhole in between the passenger seat and my seat. So I reached out within a minute. Everything so fast. I reached out to my phone. Then I decided I wanted to just reach out. I looked down first to wind down the window. Then I looked up. As I looked up, bang! It shot at me. So I lost consciousness. Sorry, I may get a little bit emotional. I'm just trying to.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
So
No.
it shot at me and I passed out. So I don't know how long I was out, but I remember regaining consciousness to the rider screaming, "Oh my God, they just shot my driver, blah, blah." I didn't even understand what she was saying at that time. I was thinking it was another person outside that was screaming. So there was this after effect sound where, in Hollywood movies, where a grenade goes out. And that's after effect. I don't know what it's called. I think it's concussion or so. I was still hearing it. So it now turned out that sound, I didn't hear it anymore. Then I realized that it was actually my rider that was screaming that he just shot my. So I realized I was one that was even shot. I didn't know it was me. And I just noticed that all the cars in front of me, all the lights, I couldn't see anything. So it turned out that he shot me with a local gun. It was this little pellet. It's like an improvised gun. The policemen called it sophisticated guns. So it was this little bit shot through the glass. So it passed through my eyes. So some of the bullets got lodged under my brain. So luckily for me, it didn't touch my brain. So I literally thought that was how I was going to die. So at some point I stopped screaming. I just laid back there and, as a Christian, I just said, okay, God, if this is how I'm going to die, just find a way to tell my loved ones I love them. That was all I said in my mind. So I lay there. Then I heard the voices of, I think after about 10 minutes, staying quiet, just like that on the covert. There was this asphalt in between both lanes. So I lay down on the covert and I was like, okay, Mutibakamu, whatever wants to happen, happen. And I heard the voices of these two policemen. So they're the policemen that eventually drove my car. One of them took the steering wheel. The other one put me in the car, the back seat, sat beside me. I was in so much pain. So we started the journey to the hospital, Yaba hospital at that military hospital. There was a time in the car I was begging the policeman to shoot me. I was in so much pain. It was so much. So long story short, we got to the hospital. They did first aid. By the time we got to the hospital, I couldn't even move. So they injected me with something. I could just hear people screaming. I couldn't move. I was almost gone. So I remember I summoned the corridor and I pulled one of the doctors and I said, "Doctor, tell me what's happening." They'll keep coming. They'll check my eyes. Can you see any lights? I say, no, no, no. I couldn't see anything till now. So I remember I dragged one of the doctors. I said, "Tell me what's happening." And he said, and I quote him, he said, "Tomi, I'm afraid you may not be able to see again." But I know what he was saying was, scientifically, you will not be able to see again, because I studied physics. And I know that there's something that connects the optic nerves with, the lens and everything, and your pupils and everything, just like the photo lens. And once that optic nerve is damaged, there's literally nothing you can do, because that's like a wire to the brain. So when he said that, I knew that the damage has been done. So that's how I got the news that I'll be a visually impaired person. And that's how it happened. So I hope that answers your question.
Wow, Tomi, thank you for sharing such an emotional story. And I apologize for having to take you down
It's okay.
memory and
I've overcome.
and you look and like someone who has a beautiful energy, and your energy is infectious, and so we just needed to understand and have a backstory, because this backstory gives perspective about the decisions that you made going forward. It's a sad thing, and I'm happy that you are much better now, and you're doing much better than you're doing. And I'm sure, and I pray that every single day will be better than the previous day for you and for your family and your loved ones.
Amen.
Did that incident shape? And the answer to this question, I know, is a yes. So maybe I will rephrase and say, how did that incident shape your decisions about life generally? What you wanted to do and what you were doing. You were currently somebody who was into tech, working with your hands, and probably repairing gadgets in Computer Village, a famous hub for computer and accessories in Lagos, Nigeria. And you were driving an Uber when this happened. So how did your experience as somebody getting involved in an armed robbery attack and then losing your sight, how did that change your perspective and your plans going forward?
So obviously there was a mindset shift. First of all, negative, because I became depressed, obviously. In fact, there was a time when I attempted suicide once. I was depressed for a while. In fact, specifically for a month. Even though, yes, there was still shades and, dark shades in between, where sometimes I'll be depressed. Even till now, till now, when I say till now, there's sometimes I still, fall into that depression, which I feel is a human feeling. My son, which I'm not able to see, sometimes it gets to me, So there was that time when the depression was just obvious when you get that kind of feedback. And for someone who was a very futuristic person, I had plans for my life, and I'm like, I'm a failure. That's what I kept on telling myself. How do I do it? How do I support my mom? I was raised by a single mom. So all of these things, I fell into depression initially, but after about a month, I realized that. So I remember I told myself, so it was more like self-evaluation. And I asked myself, Tomi, if you continue this way, you just might commit suicide, and you just might successfully commit suicide and cause more pain for your loved ones. I grew up, I have a very close family, a very loving family. We became very close when mom and dad separated. So I realized that I was telling myself that if you do this to yourself, you will not just cause pain for yourself, you are not just doing self-harm, but you're hurting and you're giving a long-term pain to people who loves you, people who care about you. So it started with that mindset shift. So I started to ask myself the question that, how do you get out of this? So I remember then I would tell my brother to play songs of inspirational songs. In fact, I remember there was this song I started listening to, Rise Up by Andrea Day. And I remember I listened to a lot of, Christians and inspirational music. So I focused on inspirational songs. So this was me intentionally and deliberately saying I choose to come out of this. I always tell people life is about choices, right? So this was me choosing to say, no, I'm not going to commit suicide. But how could I help myself out of it? So I started listening to music. There was this song, I Rise Up by Andrea Day. So many songs like that. So it helped. I realized that I was getting better, but even though I was still, there was that thought. So I realized that consistently doing those things would eventually push back the negativity. So I just kept on doing it regardless. It got to a time that I was even singing with the nurses in the hospital. This was when I was still on the hospital bed. I was still going through treatment. They were still cleaning it. So it was just me choosing and intentionally doing all this. And also another thing that helped me is that I've always studied stoicism. I'm a very, very philosophical person. I love philosophy, so especially for the fact that I study physics. But I love stoicism, the likes of Pythagoras and the likes, Socrates. I fell back on that too. I think there was this quote, a Stoic quote, I can't remember where it was from, that if you allow the water in the sea get into the boat, it will sink. So I didn't let myself, so it was me telling myself that don't let your situation define you. So I started focusing on stoicism as well. I couldn't control what happened to me, but I can control how I react to it. So that was how I just started helping myself. I didn't even see a counselor. I just self-help, self-evaluation, like I said. So that was how the mindset shift happened. Then people started hearing my story. So my story started trending on Twitter back then, and I realized that many people were being inspired by my story. And I realized that, okay, I could turn this mess to a message. But what type of message? I asked myself and I said, okay, if people hear my story, this guy was shot and he overcame and he chooses happiness, he chooses to live, people will be inspired. So I started sharing my story. So sharing my story made me to realize what I can do with my life. So that leads to your question. I started public speaking. That was back in Nigeria. I was called to share my story, just to encourage, talk about forgiveness. That one's Christianity, because eventually I had to forgive. In fact, forgiveness was one of the stepping stone to get myself out of depression. I must say that if I didn't forgive, even though the guy didn't come and meet me physically and say, "Yo, I'm sorry," if I didn't forgive, I would not be where I am today. So I let go. I did it for me. I tell people that unforgiveness is like holding on to hot coal. You keep on holding on to it, but it burns you, and you're still holding on to it. But letting go, you let go of the pain as well. So that was what I tell myself. Always say I studied from stoicism as well, So I just realized that I could be that encouragement to people. So I started developing myself. I went to the Institute of Counseling at Ikoyi, and right now I'm also a mental health advocate. I started in advocacy as well, also a disability advocate. Right now I advocate for disability inclusion and accessibility. I also volunteer with fintechs and startups who want to start up an app and just to volunteer and ensure that those apps are accessible for those people who are into some software. So imagine shifting from hardware to software. So I realized that I love technology, so I just found a way to also find myself in that space. So that's basically what I do now. And that
Interesting
was
that
what I've led to who I am now.
for me, this story is very inspirational.
Thank
Uh,
you.
and I'm very happy to hear how you turned your situation and made a positive thing. And you never know how many people would have gotten inspired, or people who were in similar situations like you, who by your story and by the work that you do, been encouraged and inspired. Even those people who thought that, oh, they had things tough, and when they hear your own story, they're like, do I really have things tough? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, where is it that big of a deal? You know,
Mm.
so my hope and prayer is that your strength will always be renewed every single day, and
Amen. Thank you.
that kept you going will keep on going, and help you thrive in all facets of your life. Now,
Amen.
so I'm now shift a bit to focus now on your decision to relocate. Did this did you being blind have a role to play in your relocation? Did would you have do you have were you planning to come to Canada even before the incident with those robbers, or your coming to Canada was as a result of that situation? What was your Canada story like? How did you move from that situation, that incident in 2019, and then find yourself processing your documents to relocate and come to Canada?
Mm. Okay, so I love this question. um, what shaped my thoughts was political. Even though I wasn't into politics, I wasn't, not officially, I wasn't planning to run for any, position or what have you. But I love politics. I was very, very political conscious of my environment. But in a way, what influenced that was not directly political. But I would say that during the 20, because I moved here in 2023. So 2022, 2023, we're planning towards election in Nigeria. I wasn't in support of the ruling party, only in support of the main opposition back then. So, and they didn't win. I was heartbroken, and when this happened to me, I felt things could be better in Lagos, as a driver, even though, yes, that's the ruling party back then, yes, they were doing some things right. I felt things could be better. Then when I was driving, there were a lot of things I was seeing on the street, just even the streets of Lagos, which I feel could be done better. But at this time, I was okay. At this time, I was married. I had 2 kids, and I thought about it. I had a deep thought. I've always been a lover of Nigeria. I'm a patriotic person. I love my country. But there was the thought that your disability, are you sure you can cope in Nigeria? There was also when I've heard from other persons with disabilities like myself who are intellectually okay, but there's a lot of discrimination. I've heard discriminative stories from colleagues of mine. I went to Federal Nigeria Site for the Blind. That was where I went to do rehab. And I heard a lot of stories about blind people who goes for interviews, they do everything right, but what disqualifies them is their disability. So, and also what else was another thing I thought of was, social welfare and everything in between. So I just made that decision. In fact, my wife was the one pushing, let's travel. All the while we were married, she was saying, let's plan it and all of that. I said, no, this Nigeria will be okay. But during the election and the politics, I felt that the opposition party could make things better. So I just made that decision that, see, let's do this, let's find our way. So that's basically what shaped my decision. It was just basically, I don't want to take that risk. What if things deteriorate? What if things don't get better? What if policies are not made to better the lives of persons with disabilities? So I didn't want to take that risk. I wanted to be there for my children. I didn't have a father figure growing up. So I wanted to be able to be sane and be there for my children. I didn't want any negativity, any negative thinking, especially with not being able to provide for my family and all of that. So I felt that going to somewhere like Canada would give me that enabling environment, you know. So that's what shaped my decision.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a sensible, that's a very sensible thing to do. And you know, you said you made that decision to move first. It was a political decision, and then you looked at the situation of people living with disabilities in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a struggle. We must be very honest that
Yeah.
you cannot compare what life would be like for someone living with disability in Nigeria to anywhere in the Western world, and that's the truth. Uh, Even for everyday people who don't even live with disabilities, there's a lot of discrimination, stigmatization, challenges, and just a lot. Now, you now have a situation whereby uh, someone living with disability is treated unfairly. So it's I think it's a sensible thing, and I'm sure you, like you said, you were probably part of the school of thought that said, well, I'm a Nigerian, I will stay here, I will rock it in this Nigeria, we'll do it. But your experience will give you a rethink that, can I fight this fight alone? Let me
Mm-hmm.
just let me go to a place where I would probably have the feelings or have the capacity to do what I want to do, and where my own rights as a human being, as a citizen, will be respected. And Bushi hands raised, and I'll just ask one question, and then Bushi, you can jump in. So now that you have been living in Canada for a year and a half, I believe, or thereabouts, less than 2 years, um, do you think you made the right decision as a blind person coming to live in Canada? How has the experience been like here in Canada so far?
Oh, um, I must say that I made the right decision, um, because right now I'm experiencing it. So I didn't know what to expect. I only saw things on social media, did research. I even did research down to disability welfare and everything in between, because I can access my phone myself. That's one of the things that I didn't know blind people could do. So I learned how to use my phone myself. So I was doing research by myself. I was checking what's Canada's policies towards persons with disability and everything in between. So before coming to Canada, I did all of that. So I didn't know what to expect. I was like, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good. Okay. Then experiencing that now, I must say, oh yes, I made the right decision. Because right now, even though I'm not a citizen, I receive some form of stipends from the government, which shows that the government cares about the welfare of persons living with disabilities or persons with special needs, persons with intellectual disabilities. Because there's person with disability and intellectual. Intellectual is the likes of Down syndrome and the likes, autism. Those people get some form of, even with their parents, as young as, from the parents get on their behalf, and things like that are not in Nigeria. In fact, the Nigerian government have not, when I was in Nigeria, when I became blind, I didn't receive anything as a Nigerian citizen, So also, I must say that even the rehabilitation process here is top notch. There's an organization called CNIB, Canadian National Institute for the Blind. By the time I got here, they didn't even waste time. I reached out to them. I already did my research, and I realized that that was the body for blind people, the organization that helps blind people. So I started my mobility training. They did mobility for me. I learned how to go down my building myself, use the elevator. They just wanted to, and they follow your pace. They are very, very key on inclusion. Even the buildings, the grills and everything. Hardly do you see that in Nigeria. Even the roads I go out with my wife. I take walks with my wife. I couldn't do that in Nigeria. You get bumped in all the time. I stayed in Ikorodu. Back then, I would be walking from inside Ikorodu to BRT. I can't count how many people will bump into me. My wife will be like, you cannot even see. Someone that is not seeing. So there is that difference. The roads are so accessible. There's pathway for people on wheelchair. Even I use that path as well. I walk with my wife, with the kids, they're in stroller, and nobody's bumping into me. So it's totally, I'm able to go out freely. Then I used to be scared of going out. And there's also that security. I cannot see, I don't know what's going on. But there was this, if anything happens to you now, if you call police in Nigeria, they will not quickly come to your aid. But I knew that coming to Canada, if I have any issue, maybe I'm taking a walk by myself, and at least I know that in the next 5 minutes, something is happening and ambulance or the police is coming. But I remember back in Nigeria, I couldn't call an ambulance. I couldn't, when this stuff happened to me, there was no way ambulance can get there at that time. Even I've heard stories of when you call the ambulance and they'll say, there's no fuel in the, those stories, it has happened to friends of mine. But it's not, that's not the case here. So I would say it's the right, for someone like myself and my disability, it was the right decision. And I'm experiencing it now. Yeah.
Interesting. Busui has a question. So Busui, please go ahead.
You partly answered my question, because part of my question was what expectations did you have for yourself in Canada when you were coming here as a visually impaired person, in terms of have those expectations been met? The other question I have is this: I know that yes, there's a lot of support for visually impaired people with disabilities in Canada, in terms of even a lot of times when they're planning in terms of building, construction and everything, they put them in mind, they take them in mind, public spaces, all those kind of things. But my other question is this: in terms of the getting employment, trying to get a job, getting busy, how has that experience been so far as a visually impaired person? Do you think that hasn't stopped you from getting busy, getting engaged, getting a job, unlike in Nigeria, where you mentioned that, like, your friends or someone who went for an interview, fantastic person, has the credential, has the qualification, but they kind of tell you that because you're visually impaired, we can't give you the job. How's the experience been for you on that front in Canada?
All right, so I think your question is even linked, and I'll answer them this at once. So, expectations. Remember, I said that I thought that, coming to Canada, the people in Nigeria, employment. Now, there was also, I didn't mention employment. I expected that if I get to Canada, I'll be employed, I'll develop myself and all of that. Even though I'm still, developing myself, I'm still, learning how to use my laptop. I must say that my expectation is not met, because I won't say for myself, but I've been able to confirm from 1 or 2 or 3 people. A Canadian who has been here since when she was born, I had conversations with her. Then also a Nigerian who has been here for the past 5 years. They are both blind people. Now, my expectation was, coming to Canada, I'll be employed. There's a lot of jobs. They will give me preference and all of that. But listening to those people, it's almost like it's the same thing. The only difference is that they encourage employers. In fact, there's stipends they give employers to accommodate people like myself. They don't do that in Nigeria. They give them stipends. I think there's this thing, I can't remember the name. They give them this allocation and just equity, just to encourage them employing persons with disabilities. But unfortunately, to answer your question, sir, it is almost the same thing when it comes to that employment. There is discrimination. Even though I myself have not applied for any job, because like I said, right now I'm learning how to use my laptop under vision loss rehabilitation Manitoba. They are teaching me how to use my laptop. I want to be able to go back to school. So, and also the second part of your question is, yes, I want to develop myself. I'm already doing it, like I said. And now I have these fears now that if I finish my school now, okay, I want to be a massage therapist. It's something I've always wanted to do before I became blind in Nigeria. So I researched the jobs that I can do as a blind person in Canada. I did my research on Google, and the one that got to me, there's customer care, and other ones. You can even work as you can work a 9 to 5 job on a laptop, like the usual 9 to 5 person. But the one I really loved, I thought I could do passionately. I was always passionate about massage and everything. So I decided to go for massage, even though I've not started, but I'm already developing myself towards it. I did massage therapy theory back in Nigeria before I came here, but I still have to go to the school for 2 years. So that was what made me go for the option of learning how to use my laptop so that I can go to the school here. You have to be able to write exams and all of that. So to answer your question, Mr. Busui, it is the same. My expectation was not met when it comes to employability. So I have that fear that when I finish my school now, is this what I'll still go through in Canada? So yeah. My expectation was not met when it comes to that.
In part 2, we'll be speaking more with Tomi and more of his experiences, his challenges as a person living with disability in Canada. And Tomi's wife will be joining us to explore how it is like supporting our husband and supporting the 2 children.